We're good.
You got it? Okay. All right, so we spent quite some time talking about tone, so we're going to quickly go through the rest of them. Pitch. So generally speaking, women tend to be more high-pitched, men tend to be more low-pitched. Many of you have probably seen the commercial, the Allstate commercial, with the guy who says, "That's Allstate's promise."
Yeah.
You know that commercial? Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's a very low-pitched speaker.
Were you in good hands?
What?
That
Huh?
guy? That guy?
You're in good hands.
Yeah,
Yes, you're in good hands with Allstate. What do we usually feel when someone is a low-pitched speaker?
Softer.
We feel like they're softer, safer. Okay. What else?
Calmer.
Trust, intimidating, polite, calming. Okay. We usually associate a higher level of credibility with someone who is a lower pitched speaker than someone who is a higher pitched speaker. Okay? And we may know some people who, when they speak, their voice goes like really high, like this, and it's not only annoying, but it also takes away from their credibility. Okay? So, contrary to popular belief, tone, pitch, inflection, articulation, rate, these are all things that we can control. Okay? So I tend to be a very high-pitched speaker. Those of you who know me in class, when I get excited, I do squeak sometimes. Okay? So when I'm speaking, I will purposely lower the pitch of my voice to modulate it in a way where it sounds a little bit more credible. Okay? And women usually have more difficulty with controlling the pitch than men do because they tend to be created with a higher pitched voice. But the lower the pitch, the more likely you will be seen as trustworthy and reliable. All right, volume is another very important element. We see in our community in particular a lot of people who feel that if they talk really loud, then you're going to hear what they're saying and you're going to understand it. We see it also when people get into arguments. Oftentimes, they'll think the louder they are, the better of a communicator they are, which is absolutely not true. Okay? The person who communicates in the strongest way, or in a way where they can get their message across in the clearest way, is often someone who can control the volume of their voice to increase it when it's necessary to stress a certain point, but then also decrease it in order to stress another point. Okay? And this is another element of vocal variety. Being able to control the volume of your voice so that it is never just shouting at a tone that's constantly loud like this, but at the same time, not keeping it so low and consistent. Okay? Again, it goes back to vocal variety. Having the ability to switch through your volume, increasing it when needed, and decreasing it as needed.
But it does, the high pitch is a little bit sometimes a confidence.
High pitch or high volume?
High volume.
Volume.
Confidence, and the low volume is maybe less confident. It doesn't know something about what you're talking about.
Well, it depends. If you're using a low volume, like I think this is the next thing that I'm going to talk about, then that's definitely low confidence. But it never stands alone. So volume itself is not an indicator of confidence alone, right? If the low volume is associated, I don't know if you noticed, but when I was showing you the low volume that was insecure, my eyes looked down, right? I kind of hid myself with the paper. My voice went downwards. So I can have a low volume in this way, but still appear confident. Or I can have a loud volume and also appear confident, but if I continue in this way, then I'm also going to appear very aggressive. Okay? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some people, they do have low volume naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And they really, I mean, keep telling them, raise your voice, they can't.
Yes.
And that's when they need a microphone.
Mm-hmm.
And some people are loud, like, I'm
Yes.
loud.
You're loud, yes.
I'm loud, I mean,
Yes.
And my students, they always knew.
Uh-huh.
I'm loud, and if they misbehave, I'm going to be even louder.
Okay.
So, and I never need a microphone
Right.
in a classroom like this.
Right, and you were able to project.
So the thing is, I mean, sometimes it's the nature of the person.
Mhm.
So some people are
But I think
naturally
that
loud, some people are
we can overcome our nature to become, we can overcome our nature to become better communicators.
So what happens is nowadays more and more telephonic interviews.
Mm-hmm.
People not seeing you, they're
Right.
just listening to you. This is what we train people who come from different countries. We said you need to speak confident and a little bit louder so people can understand clearly, and they think that you know the technology, you know the things that what you're talking about.
Right.
But if over the phone you're giving the interview, and you're a little bit slow, the person outside they think he doesn't know anything,
They don't.
even though you know everything.
Yeah. And it's very context-based as well. You know, in an interview, you're going to present yourself in a different way than when you're giving a da'wah workshop, for example, you know? So it's very contextually based and making sure that you adjust the message that you're sending and the way you're sending it based on the audience you're sending it to, okay? And all of these go hand in hand. So it's not going to be volume alone that's going to sell your message. It's not going to be pitch alone, right? Your rate of speech, how fast you speak, how slow you speak. Your inflection. You know, I have some students who every time they answer a question, I might say, you know, is it raining out? And they might answer and say, yes. And almost every question I ask is answered with another question. Because the inflection at the end of their sentences always is an upward inflection. So, you know, if I might say something like, who killed Julius Caesar?
Brutus?
Okay, perfect example. I'm hoping that you did that just for the example.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Do you see how the inflection in the voice took away? She could have said it really loud, but because the inflection was an upward inflection, it took away from her level of confidence, okay? So the inflection is very important as well. That when you speak, you make sure that there is finality in the end of each statement, okay? And that also goes hand in hand with the pauses.
Okay. I get all the other ones, pitch, volume, etc. Like you can hear it. I guess I'm tone deaf to myself. So like as a teenager, my mom used to say, it's not what you said, it's how you said it. She used to get upset with me. Or like people often say that, you know, from the tone of your voice, and I'm like, what tone? I didn't have a tone. So how do you, if I'm tone deaf, how do I start hearing my own tone?
Videotape yourself.
Oh, okay.
Videotape yourself. Honestly, it is the most powerful tool to improving your communication skills. Okay? It is so important to see yourself and hear yourself, you know. And I will tell you honestly, you know, the first television interview I ever did, I thought I did great in it. You know, I left, I was all confident. I was like, oh man, I was great. You know, I rocked that one. And then I watched it. And I cried for like a week because I had no idea that, first of all, I'm a huge head bobber. And it's gotten much better over the years. But you know, for me, when someone speaks to me, if I want to show them that I'm listening, I'll nod my head a lot. So now when it aired on the television, on the show, the interview, the whole time I'm sitting there going like this, you know? And I didn't realize how hideous it looked that I was doing this. And my voice was all over the place, and I had question mark inflections almost ending every single one of my statements, and I never realized that. And that was so eye-opening to me. And even though after that I was like, I'm never gonna watch myself again, that's it, I forced myself to do it. And now it's still awkward, you know, when my lectures are videotaped and then, you know, I know they're on YouTube, I have to force myself sometimes to watch them because it's hard to watch yourself, you know. I think it's one of the hardest things to do. But when you do watch yourself, you learn so much about your communication methods. So, I mean, inshallah, my intention was to use the video camera on each of you, not today, but but hopefully towards one of the later classes, just to videotape a very short clip and then email it to you so that you can watch yourself and your speaking techniques and see what you could improve upon. It's really very eye-opening to do that. Okay, enunciation, articulation, pronunciation, okay? I know many people who have immigrated here to this country from other countries, and they say, how do I fix my pronunciation? You know, I pronounce words in a certain way, and it's just the way they come out, okay? Again, pronunciation is something that you can work on to improve as a skill. There's a movie, it used to be my mom's favorite movie, called My Fair Lady. I don't know if you're familiar with it, okay. It's about a linguistic professor who lives in England, and he says that he can take someone who is on the east side of London, which is I guess the poorer area of London, and change her language to make her seem like she is from the richer side of London, okay, and change it through her pronunciation alone. So throughout the movie, you see how her pronunciation changes. And one thing that he does is he makes her repeat tongue twisters. So in the beginning, she says something like, the rain in Spain stays mainly in the plains. And that's just the way she pronounces the words. By the end, she's saying, the rain in Spain stays mainly in the plains, you know? And she has the perfect English accent, right? How? Through practice. I cannot tell you the power of tongue twisters. Okay? And I have a list of tongue twisters, and inshallah one of the later classes we'll do this. We did it in our public speaking class actually, where consistently repeating tongue twisters and repeating it in a way that you want to hear it, the way that you want to hear it sound. And again, sometimes we can't hear our own accents. Like, what did I say today in class? Actually, Halima can share with you. What did I say today in class that you all guys got a kick out of?
We said baller and she said bowler.
And my 10th graders thought this was hilarious, because if you're bowler,
Baller.
if you're baller, you're cool,
God.
bowler. And I'm still having trouble with the pronunciation of the word. But it's like a hip word to use, like if you're young. And that's why it's not coming out right when I say it. But it's one of those words that how you pronounce it says so much about where you come from and whether or not you're cool, And so the pronunciation of words makes a huge difference. And people make judgments based on how you pronounce words. So watching yourself practice, listening to yourself, recording yourself, doing it on your iPhone even if you don't have to go all out with a video camera, and replaying it and listening to the way that you say words, and then listening to the way, even if you go on dictionary.com and you type a word in and hit on the sound icon, it will pronounce it for you in the correct way. You can even put the dialect you want it in, what area of the country you want it to say it in, and you listen to it, and then keep practicing the words until you feel like you are saying it in the way that you want to pronounce it. Okay? All right, I'm going to move on to the next slide. Getting rid of verbal fillers, verbal garbage, and vocalized pauses. Those are all the ums and the and the and the aha that fill our language. Okay? There are also words such as essentially, okay? Really, although, types of words that will repeat in our statements because we can't think of what else to say. And because we're afraid of the silence, we'll keep interjecting them. Okay? Does anyone have a word like that that could be considered a vocalized pause? It's a word that's put in to substitute. Okay. What else?
Basically.
I say people say
Okay,
Okay.
good. That's another one, actually. Yes.
Actually.
Yeah, actually. And for the longest time, basically is another one. Mine was essentially, for the longest time, I would say essentially all the time. And for me, I just thought, well, essentially sounds smart, so it's okay. But it wasn't. It was the constant repetition of it. It took away from the actual words that I wanted to say. So making sure that you're aware of what your word is, and then forcing yourself to stop and pause every time you feel that word or that filler is coming in. So our rate of speech versus our rate of retention. I was going to ask you how many words per minute do you think we speak, but I just realized it's already up there. So how many words per minute do we speak?
9 million.
Not. You're so wrong. So wrong. How many words per minute do we speak?
There.
125 to 150 words per minute. Because we are from the Northeast and we tend to speak a little bit faster, some of us speak more than that many words per minute. I actually did a test when I was in college to see how many words per minute I spoke in regular conversation. Guess how many words I spoke?
9 million.
Huh? It was not 9 million, no.
326.
220 actually.
I said
I
300,
speak,
but okay.
it's 220. So in normal conversation, I am a very, very fast talker. So when I'm speaking publicly, I literally feel like time is dragging. Like I'm like, oh my gosh, I have so much more that I want to say, and I want to speed it up because I want to put more in there. But again, I have to train myself to pause and stop and slow it down. How many words per minute can the brain process? Harima? Not 9 million, no, not 9 million. Yeah, so how many words per minute?
500.
500, good. The brain can process anywhere between 500 to 800 words per minute. Okay? So if the normal human is speaking at about 150 words per minute, and the brain is processing 500 words per minute, what do you think the brain is doing with the spare brain time? The time that it doesn't need to process the words that are being said.
Drift.
Drifting. Okay. Like Brother Tariq, what were you thinking about a few minutes ago?
Drifting.
Okay. You might have been thinking about the really good dinner that Sister Saham cooked for you, right? Or you might have been thinking about when is this class going to be over? I need to go home and sleep. Or what you're doing tomorrow, right? Our brain will process so many other thoughts when someone is speaking. Right? It is your job as the communicator, as the one who is speaking, to occupy that brain space. How do you do it? By speaking 9 million words a minute?
Yes.
No. By occupying the other senses. Remember, we talked about the senses in the beginning, okay? So it's not enough to just make sure that you've got the right words out there. It's all about how you put those words out there. Remember, we talked about the not keeping your body together? When you move your arms externally outside of the body, it takes the brain more brain time to process what your hands are doing. I've just occupied another part of your mind, okay? When you move as you're speaking, you're occupying another part of the mind. Eye contact. Sometimes they'll tell you, look at a space, at the back of the room, and then people will think you're looking at them. That's so not true, okay? Look at your audience, look at people. One of the sessions that I had at ICNA this past weekend, it was a session with Imam Suhaib Webb and Sheikh Omar Sulaiman. So of course it was packed, mashallah, because everybody wants to come hear them. And I was like couched right in the middle between their two speeches. So alhamdulillah, everyone had to sit and listen,
Is it recorded?
Yeah, they recorded all the speeches. They usually put them up like a week later or something. So you'll find it there, inshallah. But it's a room that's packed. So like 20,000 people are in there. It's dark and the lights are on the stage. They're on you. How do you have eye contact with a room that large? You do. You find in every section at least 2 or 3 friendly faces, and you move your face and your body towards those individuals, even as you're standing at the podium. Okay, so you're connecting and you're actually looking at their eyes. Did I hit the eyes of 25,000 people or 20,000 people? Probably not. Probably not. But because they had big screens in the front and on the sides, and whoever was speaking was being projected on the screens, as my head was moving toward the audience, the people who were sitting in the back looking at the screen, what did they see? Me looking at them. So that your face is still pointing in the direction of people, and you're making eye contact with some faces, and they're still connecting with you. And in situations where it's smaller, you want to make sure that you make eye contact. How long is too long for eye contact?
3 seconds.
Are you starting to be queasy, like creeped out? No, but we have this kind of a thing.
Yeah,
It's okay. We can stare into each other's eyes all day now. But normally, how long is too long?
9 million, 2 seconds.
Okay.
3 seconds.
Usually 3 seconds is the tipping point. Like if you go to 3 seconds, then people get freaked out. Okay. You should normally keep between 3/4 of a second to definitely no more than 3 seconds. Okay. 3 seconds if you're really trying to make a point to someone. Then I think that was like 4 seconds maybe. So I went over. Then you can look a little longer. But between 3/4 of a second, which is basically a glance, up to 3 seconds is the absolute max. All right, so let's continue with what we're talking about. Again, I'm just going to go for about 10 more minutes and then I'll wrap it up. All right, body language, so important. We talked a little bit about power distance last week. We talked about individualism and collectivism. We talked about personal space. Remember we said that in our area, we need about this much personal space to feel comfortable, right? So, I came in, I made sure that, I put my papers here, my snacks here, and I'm like, okay, now I'm good, right? We like to have this space between us. We like to preserve that personal space. And when we get into someone's personal space, you're such the guinea pig today. It's like, when I do this, how do you feel? Say weird, okay? Okay. All right. That's uncomfortable, right? So we don't ever want to invade people's personal space. But brother, like what you were saying in the beginning, sometimes it does get awkward. When you go to Europe, there is no invasion of personal space if someone of the opposite gender hugs you, right? Even though you feel like, okay, this is way too close for comfort, okay? And sometimes, what message can you send to show that you're feeling uncomfortable in personal space? Everybody take a look at Brother Shah. We're going to analyze him. No, not like that. Then they may think you, they have to call the police on that. Okay. The way that you were sitting before, that's why I had to ask everyone, how were you sitting before? Yes. What message is that sending? Stay away, okay. Now, in certain situations, that's understandable and somewhat acceptable. For example, you said that you try to carry a lot of things also, So sometimes doing like this can help. But for the most part, you want to keep that openness. You want to keep, especially in a public speaking situation, you want to make sure that you have that openness, that welcoming kind of a stance, okay? Kinesics has to do with the movement, haptics has to do with touch, and posture is the last one, which is incredibly important. The way that you walk into a room really means so much. How long does it take to make a first impression?
Second.
Oh, fraction.
A fraction of a second. Excellent, a fraction of a second, right? And we make judgments based on that first impression. So if it's like the first day of our class, right? And I'm gonna walk in. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Al-Bayan's class. All right. How did you feel? What judgment did you just make about me?
No eye contact? No eye contact. just-
No eye
It's
contact,
gonna be
good.
boring class.
It's gonna be a boring class, good, okay.
Don't want
What
to be
else?
here.
Huh?
You don't
I'm
wanna
very
be here.
strict, maybe, what?
Don't want to be here.
I don't want to be here, you
You're
don't want to be
tired.
here, I'm tired. Okay, good. So, okay, I'm going to do it again, okay? Alright. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the first day of our class for Al-Bayan Institute.
Positive.
Positive. Okay, very fake, right?
This is so
A little too
exciting.
chirpy.
Excited.
This is so exciting. I'm going to jump
So
off my chair.
excited, okay.
I'm going to jump off my chair.
What did I do differently, though? Besides my voice, what else was different?
You were like,
Smiling.
I was smiling. What else, though?
You
Eye
were
contact.
a lot more open.
My posture changed,
Oh, posture.
okay? You may not have picked up on it, right? You may not have realized what it was exactly that was different, but it was my posture more than anything else. The first time when I walked in, and again, it's these subtle differences
I
that
didn't notice
sometimes
that.
you don't notice. But when I walked in the first time, I actually slumped my shoulders forward, okay? I hung my arms a little lower, and then when I lifted them only to this point here, okay? And when I walked, I actually dragged my left foot a little bit as I was walking, okay? Now, because it happened so quickly, most people won't realize exactly what it is. It's a feeling that you got. The overall feeling was just like, blech, right? But it was the little things that I was doing with my posture that made all the difference, okay? When I walked in the second time, I actually threw my shoulders back. I made sure that I lifted up both my feet the same distance from each other as I walked in, okay? So it was more of an even pace. When I lifted up my arms, I lifted them up higher than I did the time before, okay? And so all of these little nonverbals come together to make a huge difference. So when Sister Arifa was saying, for example, people will say, that tone of voice, it may not be your tone. Tone may not be what they're catching. It may be something in your nonverbals that's giving off a feeling. And because not everybody is well versed in the science of communication, they will simply attribute it to the tone. Okay? But it's often the nonverbal. It's often what your body is saying more than what your voice is saying.
I'm sorry. How do you introduce such? I mean, this mean a lot. For adults, mean a lot even to learn that. How do you introduce such subject for young kids? Like, how do you take? How if like, say my daughter, she's like a little bit shy. How do you introduce such idea for her?
A lot of times it's through games and through play. I mean, the game telephone is actually a communication game, and kids play it all the time, but they don't realize what they're playing. They don't connect the dots, right? But a lot of times it's just through playing, you know. So for example, if you have a child who's very shy, and you want that child to become more outgoing, number one, first of all, accepting that your children are different, you know? Comparing your children and saying this one is outgoing, this one is shy, this one is that. That's probably, we're going to have to talk about that with parenting relationships another time, but that's not a good idea to do. Understand that they're different, but can each one improve on their communication skills? Absolutely, without a doubt. Okay? And you turn it into a game. Okay? So for example, the game of Simon Says. Kids love Simon Says. You know, in the very beginning, we kind of played a version of Simon Says, right? But teaching the kids to follow Simon Says, and as you tell them, you know, raise up your arms up high, lower your arms down low, things of that sort, getting them comfortable with their own body movements. Because we raise our children, especially in our Muslim community, to be very stiff. Okay? We raise them to kind of fear a lot of movement. We tell them, sit still, be quiet, you know, only speak when you're spoken to. Okay? For most of us, we were raised in that same way. I know I was, you know. That adab, you know, we try to implement that adab in our children, but we don't realize that it's not the adab that we're implementing. It's more restrictions than anything else. That a child can be outgoing and confident and still maintain their adab and learn how to speak up and how to be vocal and how to carry themselves without crossing any of the lines of adab that we have in our team. So it takes time, it takes practice. But the most important thing, I think, in teaching our children how to speak and how to be more confident is what we do, what we model in front of them. You know, there's a story of a young boy once who his father was praying and the child broke something. You know, and prior to that, when the father was praying, the child was climbing on his back and bothering him and talking to him, and the father kept, you know, telling him, when someone is praying, you can't bother them. You can't talk to them, because they can't answer you back when they're praying. Right? So one time the father was praying and the child broke something. So when the father finished praying, he called out the child's name, and the child was scared, so he started to run. So the father ran after him into the kitchen, and the kid ran again. He ran into the living room. The father ran after him into the living room. Into the bedroom. The father ran after him into the bedroom. Suddenly the kid looked around and he was cornered. There was nowhere he could go. So he stood in the corner and he said, Allahu Akbar. He started to pray. So you see, like, our kids, I think, learn more from what they see than anything else, And I think that's the best way to teach them confidence. Do they see us expressing ourselves with confidence? Do they see us modeling the right posture? Because to a certain extent, communication can also be learned from the visual aspect, that they watch how we walk, they watch how we talk, they watch what we do, and they will mimic it, All right. So this is just a quick exercise in terms of looking at, this was a sociological experiment that was done where there was a social event, a corporate social event, and people were placed in conversation with others. And then they were pictured with silhouettes like this, and the researchers asked the people to describe their interaction, okay? So first they went to this dyad here, and they asked the man, how did you feel about your conversation? What do you think the man said? Just based on his nonverbals, how he's standing.
Interested.
He's hesitant or he's thinking.
He's hesitant or he's thinking. He feels awkward. Good. If you see how his feet are positioned, he has 1 foot forward and 1 foot in what we consider the flight position. Okay. He's also leaning back from the woman. Okay. He actually indicated that he was very uncomfortable in the situation and he just wanted to leave. He didn't like the conversation. He didn't like the woman. Now the woman was asked, "How did you feel in the conversation?" Guess what she said?
Opposite.
Great, she said.
Yeah, he said, it was such a good conversation. I felt like he totally understood what I was getting, and I think he even liked me. And you'll see from her stance, okay, she has that more aggressive stance where she's leaning forward, right? She has her hands in this type of a position. Both of them are actually outward, extending towards him, okay? And there are other things in the contrast that we could see as well. But it was a completely different interaction. This is an exercise that we do in the Marriage Center with people who are seeking marriage. We often have young people who come to the center and say, I have met so many people, and sometimes I like them, but there's just nothing, like nobody ever comes back, And one of the first exercises we do is we study their nonverbal profile. And they're always amazed at when we put up their silhouette, when they're in conversation, as to the negative nonverbal cues that they're giving off. Many of them will come off as incredibly aggressive, and they won't realize it in their stance. Many of them will have walks that are like military-style walks, and they have no idea. They think they like languish and sway when they walk, and it's really they're walking like this, So again, it's understanding what your nonverbals are and what your body gestures are giving off. And I'm going to leave this here where you guys can take a look at these pictures, and I want you to think about what these other situations were and what that group of 3 had to say. Skip over this. I think we'll talk about this a little bit next week. All right, this is just very quickly. Facial expressions. These pictures were taken within a 3-second span. 3 seconds.
3 seconds.
3 seconds.
So much difference.
In 3 seconds, you see the facial expressions moving. So this is where she began, right? And then somebody told her, very quickly in 3 seconds, some piece of news, okay? And you see the variety of how the muscles moved and the changes in her face to the final reaction. Now the person who was speaking, when they were asked, well, how do you think she reacted to the news? He said, oh, she was surprised, okay? But do you think it was just surprise? No. Okay. Do you see the number of emotions she went through before getting to the point of surprise? First, suspicion, then openly listening, then slight anger, then a little bit of like an unsure reaction, then confusion, then outright hostility, then disbelief, finally to surprise. And this is what we do all of the time. Our facial expressions change so much in the span of a few seconds. And sometimes we think, this happens with husbands and wives all the time, right? Brother Tariq, we're gonna put you on the spot now, okay? So if Sister Saham asks you, how was the dinner that I just made, right? And let's say the dinner was burnt, okay? Let's say she burnt the dinner. I said, how was the dinner I just made.
Lovely.
What's the answer?
There's no turn.
No?
I was saying exactly like what it is.
It was burnt and it needed salt and it's like, okay, so next week we're gonna have a class on marriage, okay? And the right things to say when the dinner is burnt, okay? But generally speaking, a lot of times we'll try to give the expression that we expect someone to want, okay? Even if in the process it doesn't get there. Those who are astute at reading nonverbal communication skills, and this goes back to the Myers-Briggs, if you happen to get intuitive or ranked very highly on the intuitive scale, you would know that all of these emotions went through before we came to here, okay? If you're rated more highly on the sensing scale, then you probably wouldn't, because you would judge just with what your eyes saw. And our eyes don't catch all of the in-between. We usually need to take a still photo like this, where, you know, on our iPhones, there's a setting called burst, where it takes like 250 pictures in a second, right? It does it really quick, yeah. Try it. Try it in terms of selfies. I know we talked about selfies last week and the arrogance that's involved with it and whatnot, but try it. Take a picture of yourself with the burst function on your phone, and look at how many expressions go on your face, and it comes up something like this, right? Halima, if you do the burst, it'll go through each of the, because my students are always taking my phone and taking pictures.
Today also had you took
I know. I found all of them, all 300 of them. So, and you will see how even on your own face the expressions change. Now, since I promised we'd end at 9:15, and I know everybody is tired and has come from a long day, I don't want to continue too long today. There is more stuff that I wanted to go through. A lot more stuff, but I don't think we're going to be able to go over it today. So I think what we'll do is next week, inshallah, if you're all able to come on time, I know it's hard sometimes coming from work, but if you are able to come on time, that would be great. The next class is going to be Monday night, inshallah. We'll dive right in with where we left off with this packet. I had a whole other packet I had plans to go over today, but I don't think we're going to get to that. I am going to ask you to flip through this packet, and I want you to read this article here, Body Ritual of the Nasarima. Read it with an open mind. Yes, I know you read it in class, okay? But read it with an open mind, and we're going to relate it a little bit to some of the things we're going to talk about next week. I also want you to take this quiz that's in the packet here. Do not Google the answers, okay? If you do, that's very unethical, okay? I can't do anything to you, but it's just unethical, okay? Don't Google the answers. Try to answer this quiz to the best of your ability. I know Sister Saham is going to do her homework because she's like taking notes even and like, make sure Brother Talit does it too, okay? And for the next 2 pages, the photocopy is difficult to see. But this is a test to see whether or not you can identify the 6 major emotions on someone's face. The major emotions are disgust, fear, surprise, anger, happiness, and sadness. And even though it's not the clearest of copies, people usually get these all correct, okay? And it just shows how intuitive or sensing you might be, okay? So read the article and take the 2 quizzes that are in there, and then we'll start next week, inshallah, where we left off. And like I said, if we start on time, we should be able to get through everything, bismillah. And the next lesson of next week, which is all about family relationships, parenting, teenagerhood, and things of that sort. So how we take what we've learned in the past 2 classes and put it together into our relationships with one another. So Jazakumullahu khair. Thank you for coming, and I look forward to seeing you all next week, inshallah.